If you haven't been paying attention to Throne and Liberty, the anticipation and the excitement around this game is already starting to reach a fever pitch. And as a Final Fantasy XIV veteran myself, I've been thinking, what should Throne and Liberty learn, both positive and negative, from Final Fantasy XIV to really give itself the best chance for success here in 2023. Now, there's a lot of information that's about to drop about Throne and Liberty. There's some that I've actually been privy to, and I'm going to share that here in the next couple of weeks. So if you guys like Throne and Liberty footage, hopefully you stick around and enjoy this video. And if you don't, well, thanks for tuning in, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. But regardless, these are going to be the 5 things that Throne and Liberty needs to learn from Final Fantasy XIV. So let's go ahead and break that down right now. Starting with number 1, if you guys have been following the channel for any period of time, this should not be a surprise to you. Controller support. Final Fantasy XIV has the best in class controller support for any MMORPG. And because Throne and Liberty will be using tab targeting, from everything that we've been told and that we can see, I think this is going to be critical that they use the Final Fantasy XIV model, and they can expand on it. They can kind of take it and run with it. But Yoshi P specifically has not trademarked, has not copywritten that model because he wants other people to use it. And the fact that Throne and Liberty is coming to PS5, Xbox Series X, PC, and the fact that you can stream this to your mobile device, I'm going to assume that GeForce Now is also going to be in the mix. I'm hoping. But controller support, like, it is just the best. And I think, and I really hope that more MMOs really look to what Final Fantasy XIV is doing and adapt that exact same model. It's very comfortable, and I personally would be very excited to see Throne and Liberty use the Final Fantasy XIV controller setup. Now, beyond that, 14 also does some incredible things with the PlayStation, and that's cross-play, cross-save, meaning if you play on PC, you pick it up on PlayStation. Yes, you have to purchase the license, and I'm not going to, that doesn't bother me. It never has, because it makes sense. You're playing on another platform, purchase a license, but your character and all your progress and your friends, they're all there because you're all playing on the same servers, whether you're on a PlayStation or whether you're on PC. But again, this game is also coming to Xbox, PlayStation, and PC, and this has to have cross-play, cross-save. A lot of the questions that pop up on Reddit, is it going to be cross-play, cross-save? If it isn't, it's ultimately going to hurt the game because people are going to migrate back to where they're most comfortable. It's easier to play with your friends, especially in a cross-play, cross-save world where you don't have to sit here and jump through all these extra hoops. So if they don't do cross-play, cross-save, that's going to be a big miss for Throne and Liberty. The fact that Final Fantasy XIV has been doing it and has led the charge of that model, just the fact that they're not on an Xbox is the only kind of weirdness that we kind of see at this point here in 2023, but we'll see if that ever changes in the future. But Throne and Liberty absolutely must follow Final Fantasy XIV in the cross-play, cross-save way. I think that would be very beneficial. We've also seen Blue Protocol is actually trying to do that as well, but until that game comes out, we will have to be on the fence for that one. So we'll follow that up in another video on that one. Now, for the content rollout itself, Final Fantasy XIV is now, as a part of Endwalkers, on a 4+ month schedule. They used to be on a 3+ month schedule, and I would love to see Throne and Liberty follow the same content roadmap that Final Fantasy XIV has, not in terms of what they actually deliver, but the timing of that. When we look at the 3 seasons of the MMO, especially the player, you have hype, you have grind, and then you have complain. And this is the cycle that people go. The nice thing about Final Fantasy XIV for the longest time is that complaint cycle was short, because as soon as you started getting frustrated with the content that was in the patch, guess what? They're already talking about the next patch. So any kind of complaint or frustration was muted because you were always being inundated with new information to be excited about the next big update. Now that they've actually increased the length of that schedule, you're actually seeing a lot more drama pop up within the community. Sure, it's gotten much bigger, but it's in that complaining cycle that ends up driving the vast majority of stuff and that you do. Like you clear the content within a month, and now you actually have about 3-ish months to kind of get frustrated. And so we're seeing a little bit more of that. I think if MMOs can hit that 3-month cadence, that ends up being kind of the perfect solution for that. Now, one of the things that Final Fantasy XIV does that in terms of content rollout that I think Throne and Liberty must have, they need to have a figurehead. They need to have a face. Like if we look at New World has Scott. Scott is the face of that game, And I think when we look at Final Fantasy XIV, that's Yoshi P. Now, there's a whole team of people behind them, and I think it's important, but I think Throne and Liberty needs to adopt that same kind of mindset, especially when it comes down to communication, because even if they hit 3-month cycle updates, but people aren't really aware of what's going, it's hard to get the information. We never really know if there's a dialogue between us, and the fact that this game most likely is going to be published by Amazon Games here in the West, there's going to be a little bit of a gap in that time, and for some reason my voice cracks. So puberty is finally here. All right, now guys, if you're enjoying the video so far, if you've learned something, if you're having fun, or you just really want to freely support the channel, please be sure to like, sub, comment, and share these videos. That's the best way you can help me out. If you guys want more Throne and Liberty coverage, this is where you're going to get it. I'm going to make sure you get all the latest news and details about this game, and so be sure to check out the channel, and welcome if you do decide to subscribe. My name is Brian, if you're already a subscriber here, and welcome in, everybody. Thanks so much for hopefully engaging with the video in some way. Now, beyond that, there's two things I think that Throne and Liberty should absolutely avoid when it comes to lessons from Final Fantasy XIV. First and foremost, and if you agree with this, you gotta sound off. That's the deal on this one. Housing. Do not, for any reason, copy the Final Fantasy XIV housing system. That system is by far the worst housing system, designed with the best intentions, and then the execution of that system leads to constant frustration, to the point where I feel guilty for having a house every time it starts trending on Twitter and on Reddit. And the fact that Final Fantasy XIV housing is that controversial and frustrating for a lot of players, that in and of itself should tell you that I kind of wish they would go back to the complete drawing board and overhaul that entire system at some point in the future. So Throne and Liberty, look at their housing system and don't do that. If you're going to copy a housing system, my personal experience comes from New World, in which that everybody can have that house. You buy an instanced version of that in the open world, and the fact that they're leaning more into open world content with Throne and Liberty has me personally very, very excited to experience that in the long run. So please do not look at Final Fantasy XIV's housing system as any metric for success. And then the final thing, this is something that I really wish Final Fantasy XIV would embrace. And so based off of what they've already shown us with Throne and Liberty, it seems like they're leaning into this: builds and build culture. Now, Final Fantasy XIV's gear set system, I think, is by far incredible, but there's no builds or other things that get connected to it. It's just in this case, especially with Glamour, a visual representation of your character, as opposed to any kind of representation of what your character is capable of outside the job themselves. And no, changing your jobs on the same character does not constitute a build. But within the world of Throne and Liberty, the fact that you have a classless-based system that you can pick the various different weapons which will constitute your build, embrace in that culture. Give us lots of variety. I think essentially when the risk comes into the content roadmap, I think essentially segment various pieces of content that you can turn off various perks and build options, so that way if you ever wanted to have that race for world's first, that you don't compromise the entire game just to appease a very small percentage of the population. Give us builds, give us variety, and yes, there will be a meta, and yes, there will be people who bow down and serve that meta, but not everybody. That is actually a much smaller portion of the population than we really give it credit to. Sure, people want to be efficient and they want to do well, and that's where builds become fun, and you can experiment with them, and over time they can change. And I think that variability in terms of content, in terms of various different offerings, both PvP and PvE, have that capacity. And furthermore, I would hope that they might segment off the various different, if your build is the same for PvP and PvE, that they could also have kind of a hard line in the sand, so they can adjust how things work in PvP, maybe slightly different than they do in PvE, so that you don't end up nerfing something in PvP and then it becomes completely useless in PvE. That's one of the frustrations I end up seeing in some games, where they try to blend these two systems together. Now, they're doing a lot of really cool things, especially with Throne and Liberty. If you guys want to check out any of my previous footage, any of my previous coverage is probably the correct word, not footage in this case, but we're going to just roll with it. Be sure to check out the home channel page. We got lots of videos, lots of discussions, lots of news on this game and on many others, as I like to talk about video games here on the channel. Thank you guys so much for your time. I really appreciate you being here. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully you have a wonderful week, and hopefully I'll see you next time. But until then, take care.